you ever wondered what it's like to be a library director? Well, today we are sitting down with Jillian, the director at the Bettendorf Public Library, and we're going to get to know a little bit more about what her day-to-day life is and the operations at the library. So let's get to it.
So I'm Jillian Ashelman. I'm the director of the Bettendorf Public Library. I have worked for the Bettendorf Public Library for about 2.5 years, but I've been a library director for 10 years coming up in October.
How does one become a library director? Are there certain job requirements? Can you work your way up through the ranks? Do you need a master's?
Depending on the library and the size that you're at, most require an MLS or a master's degree in library science, but not all. It depends on, like I said, where you're at. Some of the smaller libraries in Iowa do not require that, which is nice. Having some library experience is always good. Most people I know that have become library directors have worked, from the very entry-level positions like a library clerk or a library assistant and kind of gradually work their way up into these roles.
What's a day in the life of a library director?
Currently a lot of emailing, to be honest. My typical day, it depends too, because it's just so wildly different from day to day. Mostly I'm focused on administrative work, so a lot of kind of high-end like strategic planning and kind of people management, and also working and collaborating with the city and the various boards that I work with. When I was in a smaller library environment, it was even more diverse because you had the an administrative work that you had to do, but then also you might be sitting on desk, or you might be doing collection management and things like that. In the library that I'm currently working for, I have a staff that manages a lot of those things, so then I can focus more on, where is at the library at now, where are our programs and our services, and where can we take them to the next level, or where do we need to start pivoting.
How many items does the Bettendorf Library have?
I just looked this up before you came back because I wanted to make sure I had it right. So we have a little over 176,000 physical items in our collection, which is pretty nice.
Is the Bettendorf Library considered small or large?
We're considered more of like a mid-sized suburban library. This is certainly the largest library I've worked at. I'm coming from a very small library environment where the first community I worked in was maybe about 2,500 people, and then the job I was in prior to this one was about 5,600. So this is, we consider ourselves a popular materials library, so a lot of, if you want like those big bestsellers and things like that, this is the library a lot of people come to.
How do you ensure that library services meet the needs of the community?
Lots of different metrics that we use. So statistics is a big one that we utilize. We get feedback from our library users. We do our own analysis and look at, where we are with our own services and programs, and see what is kind of trending both nationally and locally, and kind of combine all of that information to create what we have available at our library.
What strategies do you use to manage and develop library collections? Do you pick out all the books and resources?
That's someone else's job. I used to do it. I do miss it. But we have a collection development policy that is very thorough, and it gives a number of different criteria that we follow. So it ranges from based on our demand for specific materials, or things that because we want a well-rounded collection. We don't want to just have things that just the bestsellers. We want to have other things that kind of round that out. So we look at what holes we might have in our collection that we need to fill. We look at professional development journals to see, what's being reviewed, what is recommended. So there's a lot of different criteria. And we also take in patron requests as well. So we really do listen to our patrons. We try, and if we can't get it physically at our library, we have a number of different systems in place that we can usually find those items for them, whether it's we're part of a consortium called Rivershare, where we have a bunch of different local libraries where we can borrow from, or we can borrow from the state or even beyond that. So lots of different areas of opportunity to find the materials you're looking for.
How do you stay up to date with advances in library technology and trends in the field?
Going to conferences is a really big one, because that's a great way for me, especially. I'm definitely like a visual, hands-on kind of learner. So to be able to see and like actually use technology or machinery to kind of get a better feel for what is out there. We visit a lot of libraries. We talk to we've established really good vendor relationships, as well as webinars and, again, professional development journals, that sort of thing.
How do you handle challenges related to budget constraints and resource allocation in a library setting?
That is a great question. I think it is important, especially from ultimately, as the director, it's my final decision on where we're going to have to cut back, or kind of see where we can move around funding, that sort of thing. But certainly taking in the feedback from my staff, I think, is really important too, to see how that could potentially impact their areas. But on the flip side too, it's also really important for me to advocate for the library and make it known, if there are going to be cuts, how is that going to affect, the services and the programs that we have. Make sure that the city understands the impacts it's going to have, as well as my library board. And then also, if it comes to, having to do a little extra fundraising with our friends in our foundation, we work really hard to make sure that those services aren't impacted.
What are some of the key metrics you use to evaluate the success of a library program, and how do you use this information to make decisions?
We often do surveys at the end of programs, or we get feedback directly from the patrons who have attended. So we usually look at those to see, okay, this worked, what worked, what didn't, how do we adjust going forward. All of that feedback that we get is confidential, so people should feel free to be as honest as possible, constructive maybe, but honest, and let us know, what they liked and we didn't, because we certainly don't want to put a lot of time and effort from our staff into something that, isn't really meeting people's needs.
What's the most popular program at the library?
Ooh, that's a great question. We have a number of them. I think the first one that jumps to mind is during the summer. We have both the summer reading program, and we also have our very popular summer concert series. So we have live music out in Faze Field every Thursday night during the summer. So it runs usually from the beginning of June to about mid-August, and we'll have a couple hundred people there, sometimes even like 500-600 people out in that field, which is really fantastic. So, but we've got all sorts of amazing events that staff puts on. Some of my favorites have been with our new creation studio. We have some really cool equipment in there, including an industrial grade laser engraver, which is becoming really popular. So you can engrave on all sorts of things, like wood, glass, acrylic, or maybe not acrylic. I think there's some acrylic that you're not supposed to use. But my staff would be able to tell you what materials works and doesn't. But yeah.
What role do you see libraries playing in the future, and how do you plan to position your library for success?
I think, continuing to be this space where people can have connections and supporting lifelong learning. I think people who don't utilize the library, I hear a lot, like, when they think of the library, they think of like books and dust and just, like someone shushing you if you drop something, that's not what a modern day library is anymore. It's definitely more community centric, where people can come and learn and have a little fun, and just even meet new people that you wouldn't maybe meet in your everyday life. If you think about like going to work or school, and then maybe just having extracurriculars and things like that, the library is yet another place where you can really connect with your neighbors and community members that you might not see on a day-to-day basis.
What's your favorite part about being the director of the Bettendorf Public Library?
I love watching the creativity of my staff. I think it is, so my job is really to think of, again, that high level, here are some goals. How are you going to meet those goals? And watching my staff come up with these really amazing ideas and programs is just really, really cool. And then, of course, obviously, I love going down onto the floor and just seeing people enjoying the library and getting the information that they need or enjoying a program. So that's always really nice, too.
Lastly, what are you currently reading?
I just started a new book called Don't Whistle at Night, which is like an anthology of like Indigenous horror stories, which I'm really excited to get into. I thought with Halloween coming up, I thought that would be like a fun kind of spooky thing. And a bonus, the cover's just gorgeous. Saw it on a bunch of like Instagram and like TikTok videos, so I'm really excited. And it was one of those fluky things too, well, not fluky things, but whenever a new book comes out on shelf, I just always assume I'm going to have to put a hold on it. And this book was sitting on the shelf and I got it last week and I'm so excited. So I love that feeling. Excited to dive into that one.
Anyways, that is it for today's video. Don't forget to check out the end screen for our playlist with more librarian interviews. If there is a library position that you would love to see be interviewed, let us know in the comment section down below. And anyways, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you next time for a new bookish video.